Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to today's webinar on restrictive covenants for CLS.
No, sorry. It's property report.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a mistake on the script. It's a property report webinar. My name is Gwen Davis. I'm Digital Marketing Manager here at InfoTrack, and I'm delighted to be joined by our very own Liz Campbell, who is Legal Content Analyst here, and she will be taking you through this session. Before we begin the webinar, I would like to draw your attention to the Q&A tab, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. We're going to be running a Q&A session today at the end of the webinar, so please do type any questions you have for Liz. Please remember to include your name, and that way, if we do run out of time, I can direct your questions directly to Liz and we can follow up with you afterwards. Brilliant. So I know you're all busy people, so I won't keep you any longer, and I'll hand over to you, Liz.
Hiya. Okay, so my name's Liz. I'm a legal content analyst here at InfoTrack, which is essentially a really broad title given to people who are delving deep into legislation. So one second, is my camera on? It is on, okay, sorry. So delving deep into legislation, speaking to authorities, land registry, CQS, reading the government guidelines, and doing market research, which is essentially talking to you guys and really getting to the bottom of what you want to see from legal products. So I work specifically on property report, which I'm really lucky to be doing because it just encompasses all of that. And I'm also really happy to be doing these webinars because often when I talk about property report, I'm asked to speak about it in really broad brush strokes. So to do webinars like this, where we're really going into the granular detail, and I can showcase all the love and attention that's gone into it. It's really nice for me. So thank you all for joining me. Essentially, the goal of this webinar is to go over the unregistered land specific content, go through the sort of thought process the product team went through when we were deciding, you know, what to include for this specific transaction type, and sort of rounded off by going through the future of unregistered land, which, you know, Land Registry hopes will be non-existent. So I'm just gonna start sharing my screen. Just one second. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, just 2 seconds. Show all window. Oh wait, no, you don't need to. Oh, there it is. Cool. Hopefully everyone can see the InfoTrack screen. Thank you. Oh, this is nice because I can showcase the prize draw that we've been having. So yeah, you can read that, but talk to your account managers about the competition that we're having. We're, you know, giving out really some amazing prizes. You just have to do some property reports, send in your I suggest, and or make a LinkedIn post and you'll be entered automatically. But let's go into property report. So I know a lot of you are already users, so you're really probably familiar with this page. Just a fun little fact. The first question we ever received on property report was, how do I make an unregistered report? So of course, you would just select this tenure. So before you know, we go into the content, I just wanted to talk to you guys about how this product, it was basically, when it first came to market, it was advertised as this really amazing product that saves you time, but it's, well, it does, but it's so much more complex than that. And I think it's really exciting for me to sit here and explain to you how that happens. So even on this page, before you've done anything, we've already pre-populated a lot of, you know, just from your matter reference, we've pulled in your searches, we've pulled in the names. You just have to select the tenure type, and you've already, what you've essentially done is you've given property report around 200 commands. You've told it, don't show me leasehold content, do not show me unregistered land content. There is a smoke control order on this local authority search. Advise the client on the risks, offer indemnities here. You're very demanding and you've not even clicked generate yet. But when you do click generate, the content that you see is specific to those commands. Property report, has taken in all of those requests and provided you with this content library, which is just, a fraction of our entire content library. So that's a really, complex way of explaining how we save you time. We understand the importance of the smaller things also. So just wanted to highlight some of our new features that we've put out this year: the bold, the italic, the highlighter tool, the sort of things that cut into your billable hours. There's no need to be making sure the paragraphs are all aligned, to organize your contents pages, making sure the numbers are matching to the page that it corresponds to. We put effort into those things because we know they're important to you. So you can also add pictures, which I think is really exciting now, but I won't do that. So the unregistered land content, specific content, you will see predominantly in the property detail section. This is where the findings of your investigation of title is going to sit. So because the main difference between a freehold transaction and an unregistered land transaction, the way you go about advising your clients and doing that investigation, it's mainly to do with the main difference is the fact that there are no official copies. So the process, the investigation process, is completely different. And so, of course, you're going to see the main difference here in the property details section. So the investigation of title for an unregistered land is entirely different and arguably more complex procedure. And we really took the time to sort of curate specific unregistered land content. What was important to us is that the content marries well with how you would proceed with an unregistered land transaction in practice. That was really important to us. So we can research, know the legislation, know the guidelines, have it memorized, but essentially if it doesn't match to how you, the solicitor, the conveyancer, is going to use that information in practice, the product isn't going to be, usable. So that was really important to us. What's special about Property Report, unlike other products on our platform, is that report on title, there are guidelines, there are, advice given to you by Law Society and CQS, but essentially there is no concrete legislation, law that says you need to report on it this way. It is not like an SDLT where you have to do it in a specific way, otherwise, tax consequences or whatever. It is personal and it is very transaction specific. So that's what we think about when we write the content. So to go into the specifics of unregistered land, you're met with a totally different series of risks, and we've dedicated sections of the report to handle these risks. So just to start off with, lost or stolen title deeds. Now, we don't just say there are no title deeds, they've been lost or stolen. We explain the risks that accompany that. So in this scenario, we say, you may not be given title absolute, and we explain the risks of what that means. So something I've said that's been quite similar to the new build webinar is that the content is written with the assumption that the buyer doesn't know anything, that they're totally new to the conveyancing process. What I find is that the more in the dark buyers are, the more anxious and upset they can be. This is probably, you know, one of the biggest things that they're going to do in their life, the most money they're going to spend. And something like a new build transaction or an unregistered land transaction, there's lots of uncertainties there, and they're going to be needing a lot of assurance, and that's when they're going to be, you know, calling you. So if we were to leave them with just saying the title deeds are lost, and you know, you're not going to have title absolute, and these are the risks, that would put them in quite a vulnerable you know, situation where they're gonna, you know, be calling you for assurance. So we don't want them to be scared of the transaction. We don't want them to be pulling out the scale. We don't want to be making them anxious. We want them to be informed. So when we're explaining risks, we don't just stop there. We advise them on insurance policies that they can take. We advise them on the possibility of, you know, having a statutory declaration from the seller. And in this scenario, we advise them that, hey, you can upgrade your title after a certain amount of time, and we advise them on the process, and we say, hey, if you want any further assurance, to contact you, you know, putting you in that position to, you know, take care of your client and handle that matter. So that not only keeps the buyer in a sort of safe, sound of mind position, but it also protects you from liability and protects your firm from liability. So I always am so conscious of time. I'm surprised by how fast it goes, so keep going. Another high risk area is with unregistered land is the boundary extent. So a lot of the sections that are unregistered specific, we do focus on the fact that there may be more vagueness when it comes to the extent of the land that the buyer is purchasing. So in terms of the way it is organized, we've organized it by the what would you call it, the data source, such as the SIM, the land charges search, and the title deed. So here you would be able to, first we explain that the plan may not be accurate, and then we advise that the SIM search may provide further details and what the SIM search has revealed. We advise what the land charges search has revealed. Again, just showcasing the entire process when it comes to the investigation of the title, to show that you, the solicitor, has done the due diligence to, again, protect you. What you'll see with a lot of the unregistered land content is alerts. So I know a lot of you are already property report users, but just in case, I'm just going to quickly go through the process of all the purposes of the alerts. So the first reason why you may see an alert is because it's very high risk. So for example, the stamp duty land tax section, we can read, if you have a drafted SDLT on file, we can read that and we can recognize that you've selected first time buyer and another kind of relief, etc. If it's, you know, anything on the form that you've created through InfoTrack, we can read that. The issue is that we don't want to assume that the scenario hasn't changed. For example, your client may have advised that they are, from what they believe, a first-time buyer. You've drafted the SDLT, but you find out that the buyer's wife actually has inherited a castle in Scotland, and they didn't think that that counted. But of course, you know better than that, and now you have to draft a different SDLT, or you have to amend the SDLT in some way. But if you've already generated a property report draft, it would be very high risk for us to put the first time buyer's relief here without the alert, for you not to check that. So that's one of the reasons. So first one, high risk. The second reason why we have an alert is because we'd like you to input a certain type of data. For example, Japanese knotweed. This is actually the most edited section of the report. Well, undo. and people just do that. And the third reason is because, is actually also the most common reason, is because we can't find the data that we need on file. For example, let's just go back to lost and stolen title deeds. Nothing on your file tells us that that the seller is in possession of their title deeds. So we have to ask you to select the applicable content, and we provide content for each of these scenarios, whether there is or is not a title deed. For example, we can also, third-party rights. So what we hope to achieve in the future is sort of maximize all the information we have available to reduce that amount of manual intervention and the overall alerts in the report. And that means more mapping from data services that you may already be using, like ECOS for your case management system. That's really our goal for this year, to minimize all of those alerts and trying to reduce the manual intervention as much as possible. So again, I'm conscious of time and I really would like to answer questions at the end. So just to round off, so part of this webinar series is to discuss the future of particular areas within this sector of law. So it's good to talk about Land Registry and their plans for unregistered land. So the Land Registry at present have taken particular steps to achieve their goal for what they called comprehensive registration by 2030. They've openly said that there'll always be little bits of land where the owners are difficult to identify, and that will take time to ultimately register. So that's why they're calling it, a comprehensive rather than total registration by 2030. So why is this their goal? So they've advised that they want to achieve this goal for 3 reasons. One, to make it easier to buy and sell property. The second is to regulate, and the third is to protect property from fraud. So they, sorry, my emails. They began sort of on registering all publicly owned land in order to boost the housing development and battle the housing crisis. And a fun fact is the Land Registry receives around 400 first registration applications daily, and they actually have a dedicated team to handle that volume, and they also have a dedicated team called the Public Sector Engagement Team, who work with local authorities, helping them to identify if any of their land or properties are yet to be registered, and working with them to make the first registration process as streamlined as possible. They've actually also implemented discounts for people going through the first registration process voluntarily. So, they're not, applying for a mortgage, buying their home or anything like that. They are voluntarily doing it for their own volition, and they can get a 25. Just 1 second. Okay. And actually the maximum fee for a large scale, so let's say if it's a large agricultural land, for the first registration process, if it's voluntary, it's capped at 30k. That's dependent on certain conditions, but I think it's really interesting the steps Land Registry have taken to sort of have that comprehensive registration of England, UK. So to speak about that first registration content while we're here, we do touch on it again in the property detail section. It was discussed as to whether to put it into the transfer section also, to sort of sandwich the information, advise them above, and then as you know, we close off the report and advise them on the next steps, the contract, the tax, the payments, and the transfer, to advise them that these are the steps to come. We opted to include a more simplified approach for the transfer section that's not too transaction specific, but at the moment we are going through the content and refining it. And what I would just take this minute before I wrap up is to really encourage you all to contact your account managers, make an I suggest, and advise us what you want to see from property report, whether there's content that you're adding in constantly, whether there is content that you're removing consistently. Essentially, what I've always said is that this product is a beautiful synergy between legislation and practice. You don't get that with all sort of legal products. So this is, you know, a product where we, the development team, have actively taken steps to listen to you guys and take on board your suggestions. And as long as it is, you know, works with the legislation, we're happy to hear it and take it on board. Also, you know, the competition's happening, so if there was ever a time to do an I suggest, it's now. You could win some really great prizes. So yeah, send through those suggestions. I think that's it. I'm happy to take any questions. Let me just have a look.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Liz. So I'm just going to pause for a second to give anyone a chance to enter any questions that they might have. In the meantime, Liz touched on it quite quickly there. We are still running our property report competition. The deadline is this Monday, the 28th of February, but all you have to do is, if you are a property report user, you can log in. We're running it as a raffle, so each action sort of gets you a certain number of raffle tickets, and we'll pull a name out of the digital hat. And there are some really great prizes that you can win at the end. We have about £1,000 worth of prizes, including a £400 Airbnb voucher, which is really exciting. If you'd like some more information about the competition, then please get in touch with your account manager. If you're not a current user of Property Report, then there may still be time to get involved. I can see we've had one question come in for Liz, if you're happy to answer it. Is it possible to add additional sections to the main headings of the report?
When you say main headings, sorry, let me just go back onto my screen. Do you mean, so like property details, inquiries? So would you like additional subsections? Is that what you're asking?
Let's wait. Yes, please.
Yeah. So at present, that's a really good question. So essentially, it all comes down to, the crux of it all is data population. So, for example, we populate from the register, your searches, the SDLT, and we hope to be populating from far more content in the future. We don't allow for another section to be added because think of property report as this, you know, house of cards, maybe not as fragile as that, but a house of cards where every section is related to each other. It may not seem like that from the, you know, this user page, but in the back end where all that AI is happening, they're all related to each other. So for example, in the I've had sorry. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen, but I can just explain. In the overview section, we pre-populate your title, the proprietor's name, the what else do we populate? Oh, and the tenure type. So if we were to allow too much customization there, it would damage the flow and pre-population of the report. I hope that makes sense.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. I think one more question has come in, but I think that might be a question for me. Paul has said, can we send this recording on and save it? I am recording this webinar. I'll be sharing the video afterwards. So check your inbox. And yeah, if there are no further questions, all that's left to say is a massive thank you to Liz for her time. I hope you've all found this session useful, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.